Hello, my dear friends. Today we're going to talk a little bit about one of the 9 major principles of ward choir conducting. And the principle today is about learning notes. I like to compare these 9 principles of good ward choir or choral technique and learning to the 9 members of the Fellowship of the Ring. And if I had to choose a member of the Fellowship for notes, it would be Frodo Baggins. Frodo is the hobbit, the diminutive hobbit, who is charged with carrying the Ring of Power that needs to be destroyed and casting it into the fires of Mount Doom. Well, what does Frodo have to do with notes? Well, Frodo is like the main story. Everybody else supports and helps him. And in choral singing, when all's said and done, everything we do, vowels, loft, shaping, phrasing, all of that is to support those black dots on the page, the notes. Or, the symbols of what you're actually singing, these pitches. And so, teaching notes is it's a very important skill to have. And there are 3 ways you can teach parts to people. I'm just going to demonstrate a few. So let's say, take this hymn, Let Zion in Her Beauty Rise. Great hymn, number 41, I believe, in the hymn book. Let's see if I get that right. Yeah, 41 in the hymn book. Let's imagine you're teaching a ward choir this, and you get to first verse, and it's just parts, just like it is in the hymn book. You can follow along. In fact, I encourage you to follow along. Just look up Let Zion in Her Beauty Rise, Church of Jesus Christ. The hymn should pull up. Well, let's say the lowest tier of teaching notes is you go a part at a time. This is for your very simple basic choirs. You go a part at a time, and for each part, you have the piano play the part, and you have them sing it back. So if I was teaching a word choir this line, maybe I just take the first line, and I would just have, okay, basses, let's start with you. Here's your part. Okay, let's try it. And then you try it again, and they sing while the piano plays the part. 1, 2, go. So you can go that route, and then you'll say, okay, tenors. I'd kind of build it. I would, you could teach each voice part one at a time. So basses, okay, that was those 4 measures. Tenors. They sing it after you play it. Let Zion in her beauty rise, her light begins to shine. And there might be some problems, and make sure you fix them. If they don't sing something right, make sure you fix it. And then maybe at that point you put them together. Okay, tenor spaces, let's try it together. 1, 2, go. And then you say, okay, well now let's add the altos. Altos. And let me make a quick side comment. Whenever you're teaching parts, you will always want to make sure that you prep them doing these parts. For example, don't just say, okay, altos, here we go. Here's your pitch. Let Zion in. Make sure with your gesture or something, help them prepare to work on this part. So let's say you give them their note. Okay, you come in on 4. 1, 2, go. It helps them be prepared. Okay, now you've gotten that, and now you might say, okay, sopranos. You might play soprano's part. Or you might feel like maybe they already know this because it's a familiar melody, so you put the ladies together. And now, there again, it's this idea of building. So you make sure everyone's good on their pitch and their part for a small section. Then you put, them together in twos. And then you put them all together. So now you're like, okay, let's give it a try. Piano, play with us. 1, 2, go! Now, here's the part that often a lot of people don't do, but I feel like it's very, very helpful to do. And in the long run, it leads to dividends. Is that like... That's like my mess. That's like come out. That's weird. Well, sorry about that. You just got a weird thing on my mask. And this point is, after you've done this point, you've got them that they've done their parts, but they've done all of this with the piano with them. And so there's this element of training wheels, I should say, where the parts are this tricycle and the piano is the training wheels. And they're great to help people learn. But at some point, if you really want people to know their parts so that when we get into a crunch time, they feel like they've got them, the more you can practice them singing their parts without the piano, the better. Now, a few caveats. Again, you know your choir. They might not be ready for that for a piece for several weeks. They might be ready for that on the first day. In fact, most ward choirs I've seen, if you've gone over parts with the piano, they can do sections a cappella without a piano that same day, and you can see what problems there are. And then there's some choirs that are so good, and they know their stuff, that if I just gave them their pitches, and I didn't even work on their parts before, I'd just say, okay, let's try an a cappella, here we go. Da-da, and then we could fix. But what we're gonna do is, after you've taught parts on the piano, then you just say, okay, let's just try an a cappella and see how it goes. Here's your tempo. 1, 2, go. Da, 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 da. And then this is where you really need your ears, because you'll need to be able to hear, like, okay, what's wrong, what's right, and that's the reason to know the score before you work, so that when you hear this a cappella, you can hear and you're following the score and you're seeing, oh, the altos, beauty, rise, oh, they're not quite getting that. So typically, I'd say for a typical ward choir, you can probably expect it'll take about, I'd say 5 minutes to learn like 4 to 8, like a phrase like this. So for example, if I was going to learn parts for this whole verse, I would give myself 5 minutes of phrase. So there's 4 phrases, there's 4 main sections. I would give myself 20 minutes of rehearsal time to learn these parts. Because again, you want to keep in mind, you're not just learning them, you really need to make sure they're solid with them. And then the week after you've introduced those parts, so let's say this is a Sunday, I've taught them this parts for this verse, great. You should expect that by next Sunday, assuming most of them are back, of course, that they'll still have been forgotten a little bit of what the parts are. So anytime you teach parts, it's really helpful the next